Mike, I don't know if you had any
No, I'm good
comments,
with it.
questions, so unless the board does, we can have a motion in a second to adopt the resolution.
So we will move that.
I move we adopt the resolution.
Okay.
There was a second? All right.
Chairman Nevada,
Yes.
Mayor Sullivan.
Yes.
Councilman Broome,
Yes.
Ms. Adair,
Yes.
Mr. Akins,
Yes.
Mr. Carrasco,
Yes.
Mr. Cleveland,
Yes.
Mr. Addis,
Yes.
Ms. Warner.
I'm not eligible.
Okay. Next we have ordinance 2709, 230515. And basically what happened was the council passed an ordinance in, I think it was November, amending the Kirby Avenue redevelopment plan to include a piece of property that is going to be redeveloped. And that resolution or that ordinance was never passed on to the planning board for review. So in order to correct that technical situation, this ordinance rescinds that ordinance and duplicates what was in it, so that now we can review it and move along. Does anybody have any comments, questions? Okay, I will.
So this, I know so it was already voted on by council. What's the major change in it?
There's no change in it.
What was the change that they originally voted on?
They originally voted to include a piece of property that was not included in the redevelopment area.
Okay, and that's all the change was. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that's it.
And Mike, any comments on the consistency with the master plan?
Yeah, it's consistent. I think I gave planning board, I think the bulk standards used for 50 Kirby at the end of the park before the Yanks. This is similar, only 16 units. Parking was 24, and this is proposed 25 units per acre. So this is the planning board we've had three major developments, I mean, two major developments. This is the third proposed development for Kirby Avenue development area.
And for anybody who isn't aware, this is the truck farm site that has been not for a very long time. So I'm anxious to see it redeveloped.
And just as a point of information, from what I've been able to gather, this lot at one point was part of the larger tract and was carved out, probably before our time, to build a house. And now it just, this actually returns it to the original lot, because 8201, I assume, was whatever it was, it's going back to what it was, 2.01. So it was probably lot 2. This was a buildable lot carved out.
Right.
And now it's just reverting back to the bigger tract so that it can be purchased and be included in the new development.
Okay. Anybody from the public have any comment? Hearing none, we'll close the public session. Somebody want to move it? We'll move that we make no comment.
Find it to be consistent with the master plan and
Right.
no recommendations. That's what we're doing.
So moved on that.
Second.
Chairman Nevada,
Yes.
Mayor Sullivan.
Yes.
Councilman Broome,
Yes.
Ms. Adair,
Yes.
Mr. Akins,
Yes.
Mr. Carrasco,
Yes.
Mr. Cleveland,
Yes.
Mr. Addis,
Yes.
Ms. Warner.
Yes.
Okay, the next item we have is a recommendation from the Board of Adjustment that we recommend to the council that two-family houses be allowed in the POR zone. We discussed this at some length a couple of years ago. And I think that my personal position is that I think it makes sense. Markets change. The POR zone was established 30 years ago, and it served its purpose during that period of time, and I think it still does. But this will just allow additional flexibility, and I don't see a downside to it. You know, it was mentioned at the last time we discussed this, that, well, there's a potential for absentee landlords. Well, that potential exists now. And it exists not only there, but all throughout town. And I think that in light of changing market conditions, in order to actually keep the properties that are no longer marketable as mixed use, to keep them on the market, I think this makes a lot of sense.
So agree, another question. So the buildings that have been modified to accommodate businesses, right, that more house type, where the improvement coverage is more than we typically allocate, if they're used for a two-family, is there anything in place to have some of that cleaned up, like the parking lot behind that takes up the whole backyard, or is that just kind of stay?
No. The ordinance says that it's a change of use. So they go from professional office to now two-family. Should the council approve that to allow that, they have to meet the bulk standards for a two-family. Assuming the bulk standards are the same for the zone. The zone doesn't distinguish between commercial and single-family on the bulk standards. If they're over, then that would go to the Board of Adjustment, because they have to take it off if they're over.
So that they would have to, if their impervious coverage or whatever is over, they would have to either remove it or go to the Board of Adjustment.
Okay, with that change of use from an office to a two-family, for example?
Yeah.
Okay.
That change of use.
Okay, I'm good.
If they're compliant, then there's no action at all.
Yeah.
It's permanent, permitting, they meet the bulk standards, and it becomes the zoning officer issues a permit, and then if they have to do construction to modify it. They're not.
The last time we talked about this, we talked about removing the restriction for the location of the non-residential
Right.
part. Was that ever done?
No, it's in the master plan that we allow flexibility for the residents. The master plan says that. The
Okay.
ordinance doesn't, but if it's a two-family, that's a moot point, because
Yeah, but and I know of one case where, it's right down the street from my office, where the office is on the second floor and the residence is on the first floor. And I don't see why that would be prohibited, but it is.
well, we can, should the planning board agree, we can put that in the
I
recommendation.
would like to do that.
That to allow the dwellings to be wherever in the structure.
Right, we should allow single-family residential, two-family residential, and mixed-use, non-residential and residential, regardless of
Where?
where it is.
And that would be consistent with the master plan. We changed that in 2019. To allow that flexibility in the master plan.
You say commercial and residential, or just office and residential? Office.
Well, it's commercial, yes.
Well, non-residential and residential.
Right now, there's a footnote in Schedule A that says that right now, the apartment has to be on the upper floors.
Right.
Yeah, no, that I get. I just
What the
didn't-
chairman is saying is take that footnote out.
And no restriction on the type of non-residential.
Oh.
But that's already restricted
It's already
elsewhere.
restricted.
I'm
It's
just trying to
already
get a
on
picture.
Schedule
Okay.
A. I'm not recommending, or I wouldn't suggest any changes to
Yep.
that.
Got it, okay.
Just taking the footnote off to make sure that residence, the dwelling, can be
Right.
first floor, third floor, whatever floor it runs.
Okay. Somebody want to move that recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Anybody from the public have any comment?
Greg Storms, DGM Management. I just think it's a good idea. POR zone was designed for years, and it's a good buffer between Main Street and the residential area. However, as the flex space comes available and offices, we don't want to see vacant offices, vacant first floor, vacant second floor places on High Street. So I support it. I think it's a good idea.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, I just have a question. Danny Tip, Lady 15 Hamilton Street. So this is just offices, not retail or,
Correct,
Okay.
just offices.
okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll close the public session. And do I hear a motion?
Did that.
We got a
Oh,
motion,
we did?
Jason motion, Andrea
We're good,
seconded.
just voting in.
All right, then I
They changed my vote, Greg agreed with it.
Chairman Nevada,
Yes.
Mayor Sullivan.
Yes.
Councilman Groom,
Yes.
Ms. Adair,
Yes.
Mr. Akins,
Yes.
Mr. Kraska,
Yes.
Mr. Cleveland,
Yes.
Mr. Addicks,
Yes.
Ms. Warner.
Carol, you get those two over to Borough Hall then?
Yep.
Perhaps for our next meeting, if not first meeting in June. Second meeting in June.
Mike and I will get that over.
Yeah, I usually send Kevin a recommendation, we work via email with the recommendation plan.
We're meeting on the fifth.
Meeting on the fifth?
The next item is not on the agenda, but at the last meeting, we requested that Mike submit a proposal for doing the flood hazard area mapping on our tax maps. And he submitted that proposal. I still have not gotten a funding source from Kevin. I have had conversations with him about that, and
That's not on new flood maps yet.
Well, I don't know if we're ever gonna have them, I mean, they're most coming, again, I'm hearing June, but who knows?
I heard May too.
The maps-
Exactly.
Just so the planning board knows,
Yeah.
but all the streams in Somerville are delineated, so the flood hazard area is determined by DEP. Now, I have it's a gray area because it says that they're promulgated, and that term is a little elusive. After 2013, they shall be used for the flood hazard area. If they were promulgated before 2013, the applicant has the option of using the delineated maps or using the flood insurance rate maps, and whatever, plus 1 foot, and whatever has a higher elevation supposed to know. The maps that I'm proposing are the delineated maps, and it's the same maps that Craig Stiers used. He's proposing the IP on East Main. He's using the same data source. So that data source is not geo-referenced, the tax maps aren't geo-referenced. So there's gonna be some time massaging that to get a reasonable expectation of where it is. Yeah, I'm suggesting we use the intersections and markers on both maps, and because of the tax map just floats. So, get that on the tax map.
Yeah, I was gonna say, everything's floating.
Right, everything is floating, but I have the TIFF files, and that's all you can have. The maps are from the late 80s, and they're not even PDFs. I converted them TIFF to PDFs, but that's what we're talking about here. And if you've been through some of these floods we've had, the maps are on, the DEP maps, I mean, the delineated maps.
And I think, and we commented at the last meeting about the fact that DEP was supposed to come out with new mapping, and they didn't do it when they said they were gonna do it, so. I think if we're going to do this, we need to do it in such a way that the maps can be changed
Right.
when those new regs come out, so that, we don't have to go through
Yeah.
all this all over again. Just create files that can be easily modified so that we can fix it.
Yeah, the concept is anyone looking at a parcel would see whether it's in the flood hazard area or not. Like, I'm even suggesting parcels that consider flood hazard area, you're in the inside, but you won't see the line on the lot because it's 1,000 feet away or 500 feet away, that we hatch all those. A color, it's permissible by the state to hatch those, so someone looking at these maps would immediately know it's in the flood hazard area. Right now, there's a big, and Lisa knows all about this, there's a big, I think, information gap because you can't do a title search. This won't come up if you use your normal property searches, whether it's in the flood hazard area.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to do this, and I think that we should approve this proposal pending a source of funding.
Certification of funds, I guess it would be called. Because the CFO would have to certify funds available
Yeah.
before we would award it. But I think we can pass a conditional, make that a conditional resolution, I believe. And if for the council on this.
Kara, do you think we can do that? Okay.
Just make that a condition.
Are we funding it then? Or?
Well, the borough.
The borough.
How are we voting on the borough funding something?
No, we're voting on the
Right.
awarding of the contract.
Approving the contract pending
Certification.
a source of funding.
Yeah, or conditioned upon obtaining a source of funding, which is the same.
And then I guess to their point, if in fact it's not going to come from sources related to the planning board, then
Obviously,
possibly.
we have a budget.
Yeah.
If it's not coming out of our budget, how can we?
Well, that was my concern initially.
And that's what I'm saying, can we, legally, can we?
Our budget is so small now.
So if in fact the money will not be moved over to our budget, which then would be the source of planning board funds, then it's possible the council would have to approve the proposal and delineate whatever source that would come from.
Okay.
This gets us ahead of them.
That'll save time, assuming we can find funding, we don't have to
I
come
just
back.
wanna make sure we aren't,
There's gotta be funding out there. Has to be. I mean, this is a very common problem.
money, yes.
Yeah, but money and the mapping discrepancies for the flood hazard area.
Okay, yeah. That's why it would've been nice if they come up with maps, they say.
Well, that's the whole thing. FIR maps have not been updated for Somerville, they're 2007. So, and the maps from the 80s are very accurate for what all my experience. The problem is they're not cheap of reference. That is the real problem, is getting these two things to get accurate.
You're not gonna see a huge difference in the new maps,
Right.
not at all. Nothing that you wouldn't be able to, once you put the lots in there.
Okay, so you wanna move it?
So moved.
Second.
I think everybody just waits for me to do that at this point.
You're so good at it. Who is the second?
Me.
Okay.
Chairman Avayo,
Yes.
Mayor Sullivan.
Yes.
Councilman Brooke,
Yes.
Ms. Adair,
Yes.
Mr. Akins, Mr. Kraska,
Yes.
Mr. Cleveland, Mr. Addicks,
Yes.
Ms. Warner.
Yes.
Okay, I have no further comments. I will open the meeting up to the public for comments, questions. Hearing none, we'll close the public session.
Right, you don't want to know.
Oh, there, I'm sorry.
Hi.
Didn't see you.
Sorry, that's okay, I was waiting to see when you I'm Danny Tiplady, I live at 15 Hamilton Street in Somerville, and I was here at the Borough Council meeting last week, where the developer was awarded, he was named the developer to develop the East Gateway area of town. The proposal, we got multiple things from the state and attorneys about, what's gonna be behind our house. And it floods a lot. It flooded, we've been here 14 years, which isn't that long compared to a lot of other people in town. But Irene, it flooded, Ida, it flooded, the Agape house flooded. So when I saw their presentation and the lines and the maps, it's not accurate to what just happened. And I understand that that was, a historic flood, but Irene flooded almost as much in that area. So I think it's dangerous to put high density residences in that area. It's gonna be one or two bedrooms probably, but, like Mrs. Helwig was here at the meeting and she said, when people live together, babies happen. So, if someone goes into labor, how are they gonna get out? If there's another kind of medical emergency, how are they gonna get out? How are first responders gonna get in? That's my concern.
Thank you. And I will address that because the application hasn't come to the planning board.
Right. No, I know that. I just wanted to.
When it does, we will assure that there's a way for medical personnel to get in and out.
Okay.
A way for residents to get in and out.
Okay.
There may be personal property in the form of automobiles at risk,
Yes.
but there are places to go with those automobiles with a little bit of warning.
Right. Agreed. It
And-
just the
Yes.
plan as it is not.
I encourage you to come to those meetings, and
I will.
when the application is filed and we get to see it, we will address all those issues.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Hi, Glenn Denny. Cliff.
I'm sorry.
Glenn Denny,
Thank you.
Spell your last name?
Denys.
Thank you.
I also too wanted to talk just a little bit about that, but more broader about the Eastern Central Business District redevelopment plan that's over 10 years old that I think really needs to be revisited to reflect the current needs of Somerville as well as all the current environmental things, flooding as well as heat island effects and other things. It's a really, I mean, we're talking about the iPad had just been introduced and that plan is that old. And I think our town has changed a lot since then. The environment has changed a lot since then. It's probably time to go back and really look at what those needs are, what we filled already with all the great redevelopment that's already happened, and what redevelopment we really want going forward. And whether or not there's something more inventive than, rather than more apartments of how we can meet the needs of the Somerville residents. Until that happens, I've read through the plan, I've looked through, and I know that they haven't submitted actual plans, but the plans that they presented to us look to me like it violates a number of parts of the redevelopment plan, including things like it specifically states block 65, lot 4, is supposed to be preserved for open space or parking. I guess it's now a parking deck, but I'm not sure that that's what that meant in the redevelopment plan. It also says on page 7, we're supposed to be mitigating the impacts from flooding. I realize there might not be great maps, but we all know that area floods, and a lot of the lots that are proposed to be built on or overbuilt on are flooding. It also says, and I know this is kind of a wiggly one, but page 6 is to reduce the overcrowding of buildings and try to stretch out on the undersized lot, or to prevent overcrowding on undersized lots. I know that has to do with the transfer development rights that are there. I'm not sure why, in this particular case, we wouldn't leave the more flooded lots open or turn them back into something open and give the higher density further up where it is less prone to flood, which I think would probably meet that, spread it out a little bit more and also meet some of those needs. And then just to continue to raise the plan does talk about making sure that there's affordable housing. So I would just urge the planning board to communicate with the council as well that, all those things need to be considered in this pretty broad plan that they sketched out last week.
Also and again, we haven't gotten any plans or
No,
anything, so I don't think we should discuss too much of that.
Right.
I'm talking more broad picture.
Okay.
And they did, I know they didn't give actual plans, but the scope of the plan was pretty end-to-end, lot to lot. So that can obviously change a lot based on the DEP and all sorts of other things. But I don't want to wait until that's here and then we're debating the nuts and bolts of that. I'd rather get ahead of it and have it
Right. I just don't know if we can discuss an application that hasn't been an application yet.
Well, you certainly can't discuss an application that is an application. So this is something that was before council. I mean, it's up to the board how much they want to have dialogue about it, but if he's bringing the concerns, you can see, you can listen. The more council may also be another place if you haven't already been there. You can,
Yeah, I just wanted to raise that. And in particular, the whole,
I watched it.
I would like the planning board to be, I know you're not the redevelopment council or the redevelopment committee, but I think the planning board needs to be instrumental in communicating with that committee in order to move forward and see where we need to go, because you're the experts on where things are and where they should go. So,
Thank you.
thanks.
Anybody else?
I do have.
Hello, let me close the open session first. We'll do that.
We'll sit over there, Larry.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Motion to close.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Two things. When I went to the council meeting last week and we saw the presentation, in the old days, that would be a concept plan that we would see here at the planning board. It seemed like there's open hostility on both sides, from the residents and some of the people who were participating from the council side. That they were surprised that people would come to a meeting and be up in arms because they were not completely informed about something, or when time to clarify something was given, it was short shrift. There was no real explanation. That's just with the big plan. We used to do concept plans here, when we talk about it and hash it out. Now, it seems like it's getting an end around, and that's why you get the hostility. That's one thing, so, I have others, that's the first one.
Okay, and I understand that, and you're right, typically we would see the concept plan. And what happened was, the developer wanted to be designated as a redeveloper, which in the overall scheme of things is a good way to do it. But in order to do that, he showed what his concept was to the borough council without coming here first. So maybe the cart got before the horse, I don't know. I think that ultimately, we're going to see an application and we will have an opportunity to deal with it based on what our rules are.
To be fair, the now recognized as developer of that area came up with those plans to end around the DEP. That's why there are plans. And the plans came to the council because they were submitted to the DEP first. And that's why we ended up having and delayed the voting on it until they were able to come and give us a presentation. So that is why there are plans. And I in my comments to the developer, I said, I'm kind of shocked at this point that there are plans and they haven't gone through the proper channels before coming to this board, coming to the council. So I know you were there, so you were say.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm just saying that it was my observation that if we have one pack of people and everybody's up in arms, somebody didn't communicate something somewhere along the line. Either it got mishandled in the newspaper.
Well, that happened too.
Oh, I know, I'm readily acknowledging that, but I'm saying that there was no effort to dispel that. And when there was an opportunity to talk about it and spread the knowledge around, it didn't come out as well as it should have, right, in my opinion. So I don't have to beat a dead horse about that, but the other thing I wanted to talk about is that when the council makes a resolution and they say, okay, we want you guys to make a comment on it. We can comment till the cows come home. You know what they did with it? Nothing, because I stayed for the rest of the meeting and I had to ask twice to have your letter about the stupid sidewalk cafes read into the record. Because they were gonna do what they were gonna do, and they said, no, we just changed what we wanted to change. This is, I had to ask twice to say, what did the planning board say? I know we didn't agree with all this stuff, but if we're writing letters and telling the council, we disagree, shouldn't somebody somewhere read it into the record and say, well, the planning board said this, but we're gonna do what we're gonna do. So this way, it's on the record.
I can't control that.
No, I understand that, but so does it mean that every time that we write a letter, or you write a letter, because you make the effort, everybody helps you out, and we make a comment, and then the sidewalk cafe, they were talking about, oh, there's there were professionals, not board professionals, professionals who have to make site plans, full site plans with attorneys and engineers for a sidewalk cafe. We were taking handwritten drawings along that looked okay, and had a couple of circles with a table. That's what we're doing. That's not what the borough attorney said, and that's not what Mr. Brady said either. They made it seem like we're gonna save these people thousands of dollars because they don't have to come to the planning board to do a site plan. So even though we said, no, don't do it this way, we think we should sit down and talk to them, they went, we're gonna do what we're gonna do. Okay, if you're gonna do that, then why are we writing letters? Or do I have to go to every council meeting and go, can you read it into the record what they actually said? I got plenty of time, if that's what we need to do. Just saying, it's almost disrespectful that they ask us for an opinion and then it just gets
They ask us
shifted
for
aside.
our opinion because it's required by law. They're not required by law to accept our opinion.
Okay, I get that. That I understand that. It sure kind of twists the spirit of the idea that they're asking us for our opinion about something, and we said, no, we think we should talk to all the different store owners and stuff before, but nope, we're not doing that, because we're gonna save thousands of dollars without having to pay. So it was not truthful what they were saying.
Again, I can't help that.
Okay, I understand, I just think that if we're writing letters and making recommendations, at minimum, it should be read into the record, so that people understand
I
that
don't
there's a difference
disagree
in
with that
opinion.
at all. It should be
I
made part of the
appreciate
record.
Yeah.
Because it is, we are formally being asked to comment, and when we do, it should formally be made part of the record. So, I can, and I'm not gonna write another letter.
You just said, we should write a letter, right about that.
That the mayor and council at least acknowledge what our opinions are as part of the record. And then I think that's Larry's complaint.
So
Recommendations were included in the updated resolution. The things that were not included dealt with fines and regulation of fines, and a lot of the conversation that was apart from the actuals in the resolution. So a lot of what you said, aside from sitting down and meeting with everyone, because our clerk administrator and the DSA have met multiple times about what they wanted to see and how they wanted the process to go. So I know that in the meeting that we had here, the discussion was to have, liaisons from the planning board meet with folks from the DSA, but the DSA already had those meetings with the town to make it aware of what they wanted to do.
Well, with all due respect, I've spoken with a lot of the restaurant owners, and they say, nobody contacted me. So, with all due respect, I don't know that the DSA has been as thorough as I think this board wanted the discussion to be. And that's really where it is. And there's, we go back to the fact that we have one job here, and the Borough Council has another job, and the DSA has another job. And sometimes there's a tendency to cross the lines, if you will, and people are taking on responsibilities and making recommendations that are really out of their jurisdiction. And I think the result of not having everybody at the table will lead to having the discussion over again in a short period of time. And I think that's the frustration that I'm hearing from my board members. And we'd just like to have our fair share seat at the table, that's all. For the DSA to say, well, we did this, that's not their job. And they're not doing some of what their job is, which is maintaining the sidewalks, maintaining the infrastructure. So I'm not here to tell them what to do, but I think that in a large degree, this board and the opinions of this board have been disregarded and disrespected. And I think Larry's right. For once, I agree with him.
That's on record.
Even a broken clock is right twice a day.
So thank you. Okay, any other business? If none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you.
Much more eloquent than I was. Thank you.